Okay, I've tried to record this about a couple times now, and at this point, I kind of just want to get it out there just because I'm tired of messing this up. Um, Today, I want to talk about a trend that I've noticed within gaming. Um, and if you've spent any amount of time in the game playing games recently, then you've no doubt noticed it too. And that is basically the failure of AAA games. And the sudden rise of indie games. And I think, personally, this is kind of a twofold thing. It's a double-edged sword. A large portion of this is on the AAA companies, and they're just, well, they're just utter failure in making games recently. The last couple of games that major games that have been coming out lately have been kind of just, if not lackluster, just outright bad. And it's kind of an insult to the people who are playing them and the money that they're spending on it, because these companies that have significantly more money, more time, more budget, and just size in general should be putting out games that are good. Now, I understand that not every game is going to be, the best game. Even AAA companies fail. It happens. But the problem is it's becoming more and more frequent, and I don't think that's good, because the thing is, as hardware increases, the prices for each game increases as well. And I was already it hurt me personally to shell out like $60 every single time I wanted to get a new game. Now the games are getting up to like $70, $80, and that's not even counting deluxe editions if you wanted. Some of these games have deluxe editions that are like $120, like basically $150. And that's for a game that potentially could suck. At this point, the games that have been coming out now, it's gotten to a point where you could be shelling out like way too much money for a game, for the potential of the game that you're buying to just not be good. And people are not happy with that, and understandably so. Boy, I long for the days that just getting a deluxe edition of a certain game was like maybe $90 at most. You were paying at least an extra $20 basically for the deluxe edition of a game. It's not right, and people are rightfully, I think, annoyed with this, and it's kind of been pushing people towards indie games, I think. And I want to preface this in saying that I'm in no way saying that these indie games are not deserving of the popularity that they've been getting. There are many indie games that are like just fantastic. Heck, some of the biggest games that have been coming out lately have been indie games. And to be honest, I think this time with the kind of the failure of AAA games, this has been like a zenith of popularity for indie games, and it's all for the better, all for the good of it. But at least I want to think a lot of the popularity, I think, wouldn't be on these indie games if people weren't basically turning to them for entertainment rather than going to AAA games. And it's kind of sad. Realistically speaking, like, there is no way that these games that sometimes have like 2 to 3 developers are blowing certain AAA games out of the water in popularity and just gameplay in general. Like, it doesn't make sense, and realistically, it's not right. And sometimes you're paying for like maybe like all of a $30-$40 game for an indie game. I think a good example of this is Helldivers. I personally have not played Helldivers, so I can only speak so much on it. But I don't think Helldivers would have gotten as much attention as it did if Suicide Squad, which was the major game that came out around the same time that Helldivers did not fail so heavily. I'm not saying that Helldivers wouldn't have gotten the attention that it got, but I want to think that a lot of people ended up finding Helldivers when they did because Suicide Squad kind of sucked, or a lot of people A lot of people were seeing that Suicide Squad sucked, so I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people, in an attempt to look for a different avenue for, entertainment or another good gaming experience, they found Helldivers instead, and they just absolutely flooded it. I mean, the developers themselves for Helldivers said that they were not expecting that game to get nearly as much attention as it did, and and when it blew up, and it kind of left Suicide Squad in the water. And again, I want to be completely clear here. I am in no way saying that these indie games that have been blowing up lately do not deserve their popularity, or I'm not saying that by any means. There are some games that are just that are good games, no matter how you look at it. Baldur's Gate is basically an indie game, and it got Game of the Year last year. Pal World, I've been genuinely enjoying Pal World lately, and it deserves its praise, and especially Pal World for its current state. It's not even a full game yet. It's a beta. There are a lot of things wrong with that game, but it's a good game, and it capitalizes on something that people have been asking for a long time, that Nintendo and subsequently Pokemon, the original Pokemon series, have been basically negligent on, or ignoring people on, or just like completely overlooking what fans have been saying or what fans have been wanting from this game. But at the same time, I think that's also kind of why indie games have been blowing up to a certain degree as well, because lately they have been capitalizing on the things that indie games or that AAA games either won't put in their own games, or for whatever reason are choosing not to, which at this point it's their loss. You can't even say anything about it. It's just their loss if they don't want to put these things into their game, if they don't want to capitalize on these things that their fans have been asking for, and someone else, some smaller indie company, does it and does it well, then well, congratulations, you just lost out, and you lost probably a good chunk of your own fans to this smaller company that decided, hey, well, if you're not going to do it, then fine, let me try. And they succeeded, and they therefore became popular for doing the thing that they wouldn't. I think this could also partially come down to, I want to say, the comfort level of these AAA companies and developers. Some of them have what is basically a vice grip on certain genres and certain games that they see that, oh, well, we've been making this game and people have been eating it up for years now. Why bother changing anything? Basically, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Which is fine. It works. If it works, it works. But at some point, doing the same formula over and over, something can only last for so long, you know? At some point, you're gonna have to innovate something, add something to your game or to your series, to either make it different, to add something, to change up what you've been doing for the past who knows how long. Pokemon's the greatest example of this, because in all honesty, Pokemon's been doing the same thing over and over for the past couple of decades now. Now, it's been a successful system, no one can deny that by any means, and they have the right to keep doing what they want to do and keep the machine that's been running for years going. But when people start complaining and people start, saying like, hey, we want this, and could you add this, or hey, this thing's annoying, or could you maybe change up this? Maybe you want to start listening to fans, especially if it starts becoming more and more frequent with each successive game that you put out. Now, it's not to say that Pokemon hasn't changed up their system or added some things here and there to make things different, but at the end of the day, the core thing of what you do in Pokemon is still kind of the same. But actually, that's a good segue into my next point, and this is where I think the controversy comes in. I think that on top of AAA developers not quite meeting the standards that they should be meeting, there are also that players have way too high expectations for the games that they're playing. I think players have a tendency to compare games to other games, and that makes sense, obviously. If a game that a company made isn't as good as the previous game, you might be like, hey, you know what, this wasn't the best. I I kind of wish it was like the previous game that you made. But that's okay. I think that totally makes sense. You know, if a company has had a previous record of making a good series of games, and then the newest game that they put out is not quite up to the standards of their previous titles, then yeah, I think that it's okay to, maybe throw out a little criticism like, hey, what's going on? This isn't as good as your previous work. But at the same time, people don't allow, I feel like a lot of players haven't been allowing games to have that low point to a certain degree. Not every game is going to hit the zenith of what gaming can provide. But some players will look at a game that isn't quite as good as, the previous games, and they'll instantly say, this game sucks. This game's bad. It just isn't good. It has so many issues. It doesn't do this. It doesn't do that. It can't do this, or it has such bad quality here or bad quality there. And I don't think that's right. We should allow some lower points in whatever series or whatever game or whatever developer company that makes a game. Like, are we going to be disappointed that a game is bad? Yes. We always want the games that we enjoy, or the games that we're looking forward to be as good as we hope them to be. But sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. And that's just the truth. The failure is a thing that I think we all need to accept and understand that everyone goes through. Even the best of companies make failures. And I think that's fine. It makes sense. And I think we need to be able to let companies be like, okay, we messed up here. This wasn't the best game. How can we fix it? And this comes with a caveat. As long as the company that made the game, as long as the developers that made the game, learn from their mistakes, learn what worked and what didn't work, and proceed to either, if not in the game that they currently just made, fix it. Try to improve it in the next game that they make. You start losing people, and and it's completely understandable why people do this. You start losing people if subsequent games are as bad or even worse than the previous game that you made. That's obvious. But that's the inherent problem here, is that the games that have been coming out have been successively bad or just incompetent. And that is obviously going to drive people away, because why would anyone pay at this point $80-something for a game that could potentially suck? But at the same time, and I know I'm kind of ping-pong back and forth here, you gotta accept the fact that a game is sometimes a game is either just bad or appreciate a game for what it is doing. Halo Infinite, for example, and I stand by this. Halo Infinite is not a bad game. A lot of people like to rag on Halo Infinite, but at the same time, it does everything that it sets out to do competently. Does it suffer from some content issues and maybe some buggy performance every once in a while? Yes. But if you're expecting every game to come out and be the zenith of gaming, then I'm sorry, what world did you grow up on? Because apparently it wasn't Earth, because it never has a game come out and just be like, yes, this is absolutely it. Every game has its issues. Every game has its goods and its bads. Some games have way more goods than bads. Sometimes you gotta accept it. And frankly, some of the complaints that some people give out are just stupid, or just not worth the time that people are putting into it. Because someone complaining about the graphics not being complete realism is and saying it's taking them out of the experience, or saying this thing doesn't match up to this game previously, therefore it's a bad game. That's stupid. I'm sorry, but how do you enjoy games at that point? I gotta wonder. I feel like people don't enjoy games for what they are anymore, which is a source of entertainment. Are you enjoying yourself playing these games? Because if you're not enjoying it, then why on earth are you playing a game? Video games are an incredibly interactive experience, an interactive entertainment experience. Personally, for me, the whole reason why I play a game is to play the game. If the gameplay itself for the game is not enjoyable to me, then I'm not playing it. I don't care how enjoyable the story might be, or how cool the graphics might be. If I'm not enjoying it, then I'm not going to play it. And I don't know why most other people don't have the same experience. Why bother playing a game if you just don't enjoy it. Or if this one aspect of the game is such one, if there's like such a tiny aspect, like, oh, the texture or the shading in this thing is not quite good, so it's kind of taking me out of the game, or the graphical fidelity of this game is bad, or oh no, the game runs at 30 frames per second, which is the average for most games, by the way. If you're bothered by such little things, then I'm sorry. How on earth have you made it this far? How have you been playing games for as long as you have been and getting bothered by such small details? Obviously, we want our games to look good. Graphics is also a part of it, but at the end of the day, the gameplay experience is what matters. So to compare and contrast games on such minor things is kind of stupid, frankly, and petty, to be honest. Now, obviously, the average gamer, I think the average gamer doesn't really care about, such things. The problem is I don't think a lot of developers listen to the average gamer. They listen to like these major video game review platforms like, say, IGN or GameRanks or gaming like review sites and articles for supposed comments and likes and dislikes for whatever games that are made, and they are not the majority. Can they sometimes speak on the same issues that some other people have, or some of the likes that some people have? Yes, but at the same time, maybe look at the average person who's playing your game, the average household. Averagely for me, I don't need to zoom in and be able to see the fine hairs on someone's face, when I look at a certain character. Frankly, I'm good. Like, I'm good with just simplistic, like sometimes cartoonish graphics. It doesn't have to be good. The textures on a rock doesn't have to look like detailed and I can see every single like small grain of sand that's on each rock. It's not necessary. I don't think that's needed. And it's also, if anything, it's part of what's causing video games to take so long, and also potentially what's also keeping them from being good, because everyone's looking at, all these minor details, all these specific, minute things that, to add and make the game look cool and realistic and all that stuff. And realistically, I don't think the average person really cares. Does it look nice? Yeah, sure, absolutely. But, at the same time, if I have to wait 4 years for me to see the skin texture on someone's face in a game, only to find out that the game also sucks at the same time, I don't think it was really worth it. You could have put more work into the gameplay, or the style of the game, or whatever. If you made it this far into the video, I want to thank you for taking the time to just listen to me rant and ramble on about these issues that I've been seeing lately. There's a reason why I normally script these videos out, but in this video's case, I kind of just wanted to just discuss it plainly, because this has been an issue I've noticed for a while now, to be honest, and I think lately it is more apparent than it has ever been, and it's put us, I feel like, in a weird but kind of interesting place for gaming. While on one hand, indie games are flourishing, AAA games are just becoming more and more of a disappointment. And really, I feel like everything that I've mentioned in this video are only parts of a greater issue. There are several different problems that I've been noticing in video games that are becoming more and more apparent. Like live services are becoming a much more common thing, for better or for worse. In-game prices are becoming ridiculously high. There seem to be no new ideas. Like, every game has to have some type of live service multiplayer aspect to it. Every game has to have some type of live service battle pass, or every game has to have some big story-driven narrative to it. It just, it becomes old after a while. Maybe those are topics I'll talk about in greater depth in later videos. But for now, I want to thank everybody for watching and for listening to me ramble on for who knows how long at this point. And rest assured, there is an actual scripted video coming out hopefully soon. Scripting takes a while, and I also have a job, so just bear with me as I try to balance these two things. But anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.